Please subscribe and hit the like button.
Good evening and Shabbat Shalom. I'm Kirk, and I'm filling in for CW tonight, and I'm here with a rather special group of people, Molly, Mike, and Dee. And I call them special because they do so many things behind the scenes, and they help the program and the books to be what they are. And so we're going to talk with them a little while later in a few minutes and let them share some of the things that they do, as well as some personal thoughts about the Torah and sharing and shemaring the Torah and how we study it. And we may have JB, but I'm not really expecting it because JB is he has some trouble. He's the IT man for his school system, and he called and told me that he had some serious problems at the school, and nowadays that presents a big problem because so much of stuff is done online. And Craig, we will not, I'm pretty much sure he's not going to call in tonight. So we'll attempt to share with Yahweh's message to the best of our abilities, and we'll be looking at Yada Yah, Volume 4, Chapter 4. And we're going to do a little early preview of it. We will skip around a little bit, but there's some really important passages in there that are fun to study, all of which is related to the title, which is Pesach, or Passover. And like all of Yahweh's words, it tells the same information from many points of view in order to resonate with us and to help us see the whole picture a little bit more clearly. And that's what a good teacher does. Now, all of us here tonight have spent a great deal of time studying the Torah. One of the 5 terms and conditions, of course, to join Yahweh's family is to closely examine and carefully consider his testimony so that one may learn to trust and rely on him. So therefore, I wanted to start off with 2 questions for our panel, if I may. And the first is I wanted to ask y'all to enlighten us as to how you approach your personal study of Yahweh's Word, how you shemar Torah. And secondly, afterwards, I would hope that you could share with us a little bit of what you do individually and or as a group with this project and all the books that have been he's been updating and putting out and so forth. And if I may, Molly, let's start with you, and feel free also to share anything if y'all have websites or things of that nature or other things. Please share those with the people so they can also look those up and see more. So, Molly.
Hey, good evening, Kirk. How are you doing?
Good. I'm nervous. I usually get to do everything, and I just chime in when I want. So.
It sounds like this has always been what you've done, so this is great.
No. So far, so good.
Right.
So share with us.
I'll start with the last question first. I actually have been piggybacking on JB's Yahweh Bereth site, and that's where you can find the Mikra for littles. I do a lot of PowerPoint slides for children because the writing is so dense and there's so much information. I feel like we need ways to break it down for smaller kids. I have my kids are now teenagers, and they still enjoy, especially during the feast, going through the slides and looking at the Yah's testimony, breaking down into like the components. So that's my little plug for JB's site because it's a great resource for adults, but also for children.
Certainly.
Yeah. So one of the ways that I've been involved with, I'm on the proofreading squad. And as a teacher, I'm pretty good at nouns and verbs and spelling. I'm not much of a translator. I mean, that's definitely your forum. And on Shabbat, usually I spend, Craig's a prolific writer, so every week he has about between 50 to 100 pages per chapter. And Mike can certainly attest to this. It's like he writes a lot. So it's an honor to go through with about 6 or 7 other people and look at his insights and help get them ready for publication. So that's one of the main ways that I feel like, if I can help out a little bit, that's what I do. And that's one of the ways that I do study Torah is just basically by being a proofreader, but also by taking those
Sure.
insights and bringing them home to my family and having them.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes on Shabbat, what we do is we just take a section of what we're proofreading that week, and then my kids and my husband and I sit around and like, okay, like, what's meant here? And one of the things that we really like doing is like looking at the King James version and compare it to what the translation is, and just seeing the glaring disparities. So
malfeasance.
Yes. So
Well, that sounds terrific. Mike, let's ask you to do the same thing, if you would, and introduce yourself and just tell them what your personal approach is and some of the things that you're working on with Craig, and kind of share. You know, I don't think y'all get enough credit because we don't talk about you very much, and there's a whole staff, if I may be so. That may sound a little too cold. A whole bunch of friends working on the thing with him, and he knows he's always talks about y'all. But it's nice to put a voice to a name, and so share with us some of that, what you are doing involved with too, Mike.
Well, Molly made it a lot easier by putting stuff on Google Docs. Before, like a long time ago, you know, I'd find stuff and I'd kind of write it down or type it out and then send it to Jackie, and then it's a lot easier with Google Docs. But lately I've been reading it first and doing my fact checking, which I volunteered to do, I guess, a year or two ago. And since COVID, the only thing good about COVID was that I was working at home, so that saved me like an hour or two a day for not, you know, driving to work and back. So that gave me a little extra time to do that. I've been on the forum since the Yada Yada forum since 2007, October. Me and JB joined about the same time, but I didn't know JB back then. But JB only lives about maybe 30, 35 miles away, so I've been over to his house a few times for Pesach dinner. Yeah. And I guess the first book I read was Prophet of Doom, because in 2007 I went over to Malaysia on business, and it's a predominantly Muslim country. So a coworker of mine told me about Prophet of Doom, so I read that, and then I read the first version of Yada Yada after that, and I joined the forum in October of 2007. So I've been doing my own research, off and on, and emailing, Craig for the last like 13 years and stuff. I did a study like 10 years ago on the dietary laws. Leviticus chapter 11. I sent that to him, and different stuff. Like the end of 2019, I did a spreadsheet on the timeline. All the chronologies and genealogies from the Torah, from Adam and Shawa on up to Solomon and the Temple. I didn't go past that.
Yeah. Anything significant you ran across that you weren't expecting on your timeline?
Well, so you want me to tell you how I did it? I mean, I just went through.
Sure.
I put it all in a spreadsheet. Okay. I put it all in a spreadsheet. So I started out with a hypothesis that, Craig always said was that the pivotal year, 2000 Yah, was when Abraham and Ishak went, up to Mount Moriah as the, Pesach, rehearsal.
Yes.
So I worked back from that, assuming that was correct. And, using the chronologies and genealogies from the JPS Tanakh, and not the Septuagint, because the Septuagint is way off. Anyway, working backwards, I came up to, like everybody always wondered, how long were Adam and Chawa in the garden? So from my timeline, it looks like to me they were in the garden, well, at least Adam was in the garden for 80 years. Craig's been saying 70, but I think it's 80, which brings the other thing that might have happened. Maybe Towrah was only in the garden for 40 years. So maybe it was just Yah and Adam for 40 years, and then Towrah came, 40 years, and then they were together for 40 years, and then the serpent, and then they got kicked out. I could talk about stuff for a long time.
Share a few. Well, share a few, and then we'll as Dee, we'll turn it over to Dee for a little while. But go ahead, yeah.
Okay, so I have 1.5 acres of land, so I do different stuff like raise bees, and I have chickens, and I have pomegranates, and the pomegranate is on the was in the tabernacle, and I always wondered, well, why is the pomegranate on the tabernacle? Well, one year, this is several years ago, we had a windstorm, and it blew off a bunch of pomegranate blossoms, and I got to looking at them, and the normal pomegranate blossom has 6 points, which, 6 is the number of man, and if you think about it, there's 3 destinations for souls, right? There's Sheol, there's, ceasing to exist, and then there's Shamayim. So so the majority of petals were 6 pointed, but there were some 5s and there were some 7s, and I wish I would have counted the ratio, but I didn't. But
really,
it's a bell curve. The majority was 6, but there were some 5s and there were some 7s. So that tells me that that's on the tabernacle because 5 is man minus God, which would be Sheol, and then 7 is obviously man plus God, which would be Shamayim. So that's why I think the pomegranate's on the tabernacle.
Yeah.
So that was an aside. So back to the timeline. So from my timeline, Isaac Yitzhak would have been 34 years old when the rehearsal took place, which, if Yahusha was 33 or 33 and a half when Pesach happened, that's kind of a coincidence, right? If Yitzhak was 34 and Yahusha was 33 or 33 and a half, which if he was born on tabernacles, I guess you could say he would have been 33 and a half. So I thought that was a coincidence. And then from the timeline from the Torah, the flood didn't actually happen at year 1000, which is what Craig's been saying. The significant thing about 1000 Yah was, according to the timeline, the spreadsheet, was that Noah would have been 24 years old. I'm assuming that's when he started a relationship with Yah. So 24 is significant because it's 3 times 8 equals 24. So 8 is a symbol of eternity. And then there's 3 destinations for eternity. So that seems significant to me. And going up to the time of David, so 3000 Yah on the timeline. Dode would have been 8 years old. And that would have been the time when he was anointed by Samuel. And then, so that's the most significant things off the timeline that I came up with.
Mike, if somebody wants to look at that, is it posted somewhere so they can review it?
No.
Your spreadsheet?
I could send it to JB. I could convert it to a PDF file so people can view it. Because a lot of people don't have, Word or Office, Microsoft Office.
Well, I'm sure there'd be some folks that would want to look at it. Absolutely, me included.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I could send it to you. No problem.
Okay.
Since I'm a fact checker, if we got time, can I correct something from a few episodes ago?
Sure.
So on April 2nd, 2021, the BTR show, Craig made a mistake. He was talking about Enoch,
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's talking about Cain, right? So he cited Genesis 4:17, which is, and Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch, and he built a city and called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. Well, Craig made it sound like that Enoch was the one that was, taken by Yah.
Well, there's two of them.
It's really
I thought
not.
you said there's a couple of them. Oh, okay.
There's two Enochs.
Yes.
So that Enoch was the son of Cain, and the other Enoch is in the line of Seth and was the great-grandfather of Noah. So
that's good.
So let me read this. So Enoch, actually Chanakh, and it's Strong's H2585, means dedicated, from the verbal root H2596, Chanakh. So maybe the moral of that story is that if you want to be taken by God, then be dedicated to the right thing, since Chanakh means dedicated. So e.g. walking with God, and not what Cain's son did, which was have cities named after you like Alexandria or Constantinople or Washington, D.C., etc. In Genesis 5:23 and 24, and all the days of Enoch were 365 years, and Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. So that's all I have on that.
Okay, well that's good. Well, let me ask Dee. When you study, before I talk to Dee for a second. When you study, do you translate much, or are you just mostly researching? Or
no, I'm not much of a translator personally. I do love words, and I think that's really crucial. I'm never going to have the experience that Craig has after 20 years, but I like to start with the building blocks, which is the alphabet, the letters, Aleph, Bet, and building up, the roots that create the words themselves, then the word families, seeing how the words are used in other contexts, and really broadens your horizons on what those words actually mean, which is one of the ways that I'm able to figure out how Craig is actually correct, because you won't often find the way that he translates. Those words aren't usually amplified correctly,
strung together
to the extent that Craig does, right? So, really, we have a plethora of resources at our disposal. It makes it really easy to take any word and dismantle it backwards or forwards, and then put it all back together again, kind of like, dissecting it, really, which is, it's really what I do personally. I'm not a translator, but, I've been doing this for almost a decade now, and not nearly as long as everybody else. So I'm kind of the baby of the family, but I really enjoy it. And Yahweh talks about how the skeletal foundational feast, and when you think of a skeleton, I think of the menorah in this case. And the letters on the menorah represent kind of the base of that. The 22 almond blossoms to me represent the 22 letters, and how it all comes together. And you start with the skeleton and you build your way up the systems, learning the body and the nervous system, and it just kind of builds the knowledge on itself. And we were actually talking about how every year as we practice the feast with our family, we started with a very base knowledge. My kids, they like the door, putting the blood on the door, that kind of thing. And now after 9 years or so of doing it, we're kind of past the basics and we're into some deeper things. My kids have a better understanding of it now than they ever did, which is why Yahweh's method is so brilliant, because it sinks it into our long-term memory this way, annual repetition. But it's not to the point that it's exhausting. We just do it once a year, reinitiating those events every year. So I think it's a brilliant way that Yah has designed, for man, for our relationship. And I love how it's not just this dry studying of words endlessly. The Torah really captures the taste, the touch, the smell, the sight, the hearing. Every sense that we have is engaged in this process. And I really like that because as you implement this knowledge that you gain in your everyday to-day life, it kind of shapes you instead of us shaping it, which is a beautiful, I guess, perk of being in a covenant family. It teaches you how to think and act and be like in a small way, obviously. So
to lift us up to be more like him. But that's exactly that's the point. Yeah, to be more like him. Absolutely.
And I think about when Yah writes his Torah on our hearts and what it really means to embody the Torah and be, with Yah. And how can you ever really know one person? It's an endless, no one's going to know it all. Craig's constantly learning after 20 plus years of this. So I kind of approach my studying and the way I shamar Torah as a relationship event. It's a date. I'm spending time trying to get to know Yahweh's mind, his soul, his heart, what he wants for us as family, how he wants to be with me, what do I bring to that table with him personally. So that's really how I approach shamaring Torah. And in fact, in this chapter that you're reading from tonight, Craig outlined a pattern for us to follow, if you don't mind me reading that. It starts on page 11 at the bottom.
Absolutely.
All right. Number 1, listen and observe to know. And I think that's it can't be overstated enough, listening, because the religious talk at Yah, they come to the table with their own ideas that they seek to support. And what we're trying to do is engage and be open-minded and allow Yahweh's way of looking at things, the higher elevated way of things, to impact us, not the other way around. Number 2, by being discerning, forming the appropriate connections to understand. Number 3, exercise good judgment and make an informed and rational decision. And then 4, engage, acting accordingly. So, by sharing this advice with the children of Yisrael, and by asking Moshe to inscribe it in the Torah so that we could read and recite it, God has made it possible for us to, 1, shema, listen and shamar, observing his instructional guidance. This was 2, bayan, for the purpose of providing insights leading to understanding. To bayan is to encourage discernment and comprehension by making appropriate connections within a stated interval of time. That brings us to 3, wakakol mishpat. I still haven't gotten the Hebrew enunciation down, so pardon me. But according to everything he is offering with it, we are afforded the opportunity to resolve disputes by making the right decision. Through mishpat, disagreements can be appropriately and justly solved when we make an informed and rational decision by inquiring about the means to decide, judge, and vindicate. And I like this because Dode did exactly this thing, and being that he's an example we should seek to emulate. He asked Yah for understanding, mental acuity, to keep him humble, to help him make the proper connections, and then to respond accordingly. So that's why I like the idea that Yahweh gives us something we can participate in every year through the annual feast and the Shabbat, a time to connect and actually implement them into our lives. So I have a brother-in-law. He thinks that I'm obsessed with earning my salvation through works. He's into the Pauline concepts of salvation and whatnot. And he thinks that because I engage in the feast, I'm attempting to earn my salvation. And he doesn't see the point, although he can't argue that it's not wrong. And, this isn't about earning. This is about a relationship. And when I spend time with Yah, I feel refreshed, renewed, and not in some religious sense. It's just enjoyable. So you wouldn't want to approach Yah as if it's a burden or a duty,
No. If you can talk to or listen to all the knowledge from the creator of the universe.
Right. Why wouldn't you want to?
Why wouldn't you want to? spend as much time as you could. I mean, let's put it in the real world. Let's say you're a pretty good golfer and you can go down the street and talk to Tiger Woods or Jack Nicklaus or somebody. Why wouldn't you? You know, till they get tired of you.
The only person that compares is our kids, you know. And other than that, I can't think of anything better to do.
Yeah. So that's no. Well, we're going to listen to him just a minute. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read a little bit from this from chapter 4 of volume 4. I'm just going to read what the translations are. I am going to set the tone just a little bit on this one because I'm going to start with the discussion, which is going to be about the conversation Yah has to explain the purpose of the Lowy, and the Lowy priest. And the problem is that they're not here now. I mean, there's no reason, there's not a good reason for us to be here doing this. They should have been doing this, but that's not the way it worked out. Consequently, this is why it has turned out to this in the last days. So, but I am going to set this is in Bar Midbar, but I'm going to set the connotation a little bit before I begin to read it. And I made a little notes here that Yahweh sets them free. We're talking about the children of Israel. Then Moshe gifts them with the written Torah, which is not the oral law. There is no oral law. It's all written in stone or written on paper where they can see it, they can read it. I think they're probably in pictographs, to be honest with you, for a lot of reasons. And I'll explain that if we have time at the end on my approach and why I'm rather fascinated with pictographs. But regardless, they're written. It is a written language we put down for us to examine again and again and again. And he's going to now recruit. This is about him recruiting his teaching staff, in my terms, and making provision for the Lowy. He's going to give them. They're the first fruit from every tribe, and they are he's going to give them livestock, which explains to me how they're going to eat. I mean, they would be subject if they weren't independent. And we talked about this a little bit before we started, Dee. And if they don't have an ability to be independent for their own livelihood, and they're not allowed to accept money for doing priestly things, then of course they're subject to bribes. And so Yah has fulfilled that for them as well by providing them with that. And they had a seed stock, if you want, and these people could continue to grow that and build family business and build family and still have a farm as well. So they could attend the Moed Mikros and do what they were asked to do about in the tent of the witness. And then the plan is revealed again in this thing. So I'm going to read that, if I may.
Sure thing.
And so it says, "You should separate the Lowy from among the children of Israel. The Lowy shall exist for me. And thereafter, it would be appropriate for the Lowy to come to work within the tent of the eternal testimony for the appointed meeting times." And that's he's translating from Moed, the appointed meeting times. So it's right away he's existing what he's telling us what their purpose is, or what the high priority of their purpose is. And you will be purified, restored with them, and also you shall raise and elevate a wave offering with them. For indeed they are provided, put in place, and freely offered to approach me from among the children of Israel. So you have pertaining and corresponding to the firstborn of every womb. So we have direct contact on our behalf. Every firstborn son from the children of Israel. Now, let me interrupt myself. I'm purposely not going to all his. We're getting a little. I thought it'd be fun to get a little glimpse of what he has just been writing. And I'm trying not to. He's still going to go back and he's going to cover all this material in great depth, as he always does. And but there's just some little parts that I thought were rather fascinating that we could share. And he says, "I have chosen, received, and accepted for them to be with me. As mine are all of the first from the children of Israel, including both men and livestock, as was in the day I struck all of the firstborn in the land of Mizraim, or miserable Yam, as I like to call it, the crucible of the political and religious oppression. I dedicated them for myself. I have chosen, received, and accepted the Loe in place of all the firstborn among the children of Israel. And as I have given the Loe as a gift to Aaron and to the sons from among the children of Israel to do the ministerial duties related to the children of Israel within the tent of the eternal witness to the appointed meetings. Once again, he mentions Moed the second time, and reconcile and provide a pardon for the children of Israel.
Can I interrupt you for 2 seconds?
By all means.
Okay, I just really love the connection there with decorum, because when you read it initially, I don't think that I read decorum at first. But when you realize when it talks about doing the wave offering with the Lawi, it's talking about decorum. And when you read the instructions to celebrate decorum, it gives the provision of doing it with the Lawi, or the head of your house does it, and then everyone else does it as well. So there's provisions to do it with and without the Lawi in the decorum instructions, and I just thought that was really interesting.
It is. It is.
Yep.
Mike, you and Molly, if y'all want to add something in a minute, that's fine too. Let me just finish this last little bit, because I want to read the results of working with Yahweh, the priest working with Yahweh. And there will not exist among the children, this is the result, this is the promise, and there will not exist among the children of Israel the plague when the children of Israel are present and approached unto that which is set apart. So as long as they will pursue this through the priest, and the priest are doing the Moed Mikros, then there'll be no plague. And the plague, of course, is a double meaning. Obviously, it's sickness that can hurt us. You can't be free of all disease. I'm going to die. Everyone's going to die, and that sort of thing. Our bodies do wear out. So I'm not talking about he's protecting us forever. We don't want to be in this body forever, certainly. But he's also talking about the more subtle to those of us who really know. Once you learn all the times that Yahweh has called Paul, Shaul, the plague of death, the plague. And it's really the the religion of Babylon, which he adopted. So that's the result in the promise. And here's my question to y'all. And we've already kind of talked about it, but I'm just going to say, because when I was taking notes as I was reading this up, I said to myself, well, what are they supposed to teach? What's the most important thing that they're supposed to teach? And I think a group answer, your answer would be, what is the most significant thing that they were asked to teach based on what you've just read, what I've just read?
The feast.
The feast, yeah. And I think you can always include also the mitzvah, the terms and conditions.
True.
So we have seven steps along the pathway back to Yahweh. Because remember, everybody has walked away from Yahweh. When they came out of the garden, we're away. And everything is about reconciling this relationship. The whole program that he invented, the whole universe he spoke into existence with the Big Bang, if you like. That was to create a family, and they walked away because they have free will. They made bad choices, but we're all suffering from that in that regard, but we're walking back to him. There are 7 steps, and there are 5 terms and conditions. So the mitzvah, as you mentioned a little earlier, is indeed part of that. And then I wonder, I was going to read one other little section this week. Now, we're skipping through this book, but it's great fun. The Moed Mikro. I knew about the Moed Mikro. My wife and I knew about the Moed Mikro. We were taught that in church, believe it or not. We knew a lot about this stuff, but the thing what you do, like the Shabbat, we knew the Shabbat starts on Friday night and ended on Saturday night. But when you ask the question in a religious place, a Christian in particular, they will tell you, they will give you this answer. They will say to you, that plan of salvation is only for Israel and Yehuda, the Jews. Yeah. Okay, so if the above is true, then the covenant relationship, the Torah teaching, the Exodus, even the next Exodus, the one from the United States is coming, and the lone path are for whom? Or rather, who are they not for? By their own definition, is the Christians, the Muslims. Now, there's three types of Christians. There's the Roman Catholics, the Orthodox, and the protesters. That's actually what they were called to begin with.
Right.
They were protesting the Roman Catholics. So the protesters, I call them. The Muslims, the religious conspirators, the social secular humanists, the Buddhists even, the Mormons, the Hindus, the animists, ad infinitum. And you might even add, and you can add because he tells us this in many other places, that the career military leaders, political leaders, and even the chief economic schemers on that. Yeah. This is the battleground. It's always this. You'll find it over and over and over and over because we must be awfully dumb because he has to tell us over and over and over again. So, if they're telling the truth, let's show you the next one I'm going to read is Numbers, or Bar Midbar 9:14, and that's in this passage as well. And this will answer that question. If a guest or a newcomer who has gathered together to live among you wants to attend and engage in Pesach, to approach Yahweh, in the manner of the inscribed prescriptions for living, the shukwa, the instructions that cut us into the relationship, were engraved in writing, explain what we should do to receive the allotment regarding the Passover, and consistent with his means to exercise good judgment regarding the way to resolve disputes, in the manner he should actually consistently gauge one set of inscribed, one ishad, one solitary set of inscribed instructions to cut you into the relationship will exist for you all, la'otem, for the guest, for the newcomer, the visitor, and the foreigner, those of different racial, cultural, and geographic communities, and for the native-born person of the land. There's only one path. It's never been more than that, and that explains why the path is so narrow and few find it. There's only one path. So
much for 30,000 plus denominations.
Yeah, or 2.3 to 2.5 billion Christians, et cetera,
right.
et cetera, et cetera. So, comments, y'all?
At the same time, though, he's really inclusive because this says no matter where you're from, you still can be included. You just have to find your way here. So I kind of find hope in that because I'm in that number. I'm not a Yehudim at all, and the fact that this is an open invitation.
Yes. But it's going to come through them. They're the oracle people. They're the ones who have kept the Dead Sea Scrolls, for that matter, and stored them. They're the ones who we're reading about. They, as bad as they've been, the truth is still lying there, and he's still coming back for them, and they will one day start over, a reset. So, and what's so comforting is it's always been so. But, they have to do the same thing. We talked about this one time so long ago, and when it dawned on me that, Abraham and Sarah, they had walked away. Otherwise, Yahweh would have never approached them. But they're Babylonians. There's no Hebrews.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's no Jews. There's no Israelite. That came 4 great-grandchildren. Mm-hmm. Before we even established that. So it's not as if Eber, which is the word that we got the Hebrew from, was to cross over, pass over, if you like. You can translate it that way. Eber, you could also translate it to walk from darkness into light. So
the Torah grows. It's a living document that matures and is added to, growing with, really, as things progress. And it's cool to see that through the story of Abraham and his children and the cutting of the covenant, how the Torah is a living thing that evolves with the people.
Well, in His Word, it never goes away. You know,
right?
So it's a living document, I guess. It's fair to say. Let me ask you this, because Craig said this one time, and I didn't agree for a couple of reasons. One time he lamented, he was having a bad day, I think, and he lamented that he made it too easy by telling what the terms and conditions are, so anyone could theoretically participate in this and be saved when they really don't, or be reconciled to Yahweh and not really want to be part of the family, but just wants to save them. But and I thought about that a lot, and this has been my experience. Maybe you can share yours before, and then we'll talk about the 5 terms and conditions and the 7 steps of the Moed Mikra just a little bit. It has been my experience, and this is the people who I have talked to. It's a very limited number. I've talked to hundreds of people. I won't say 1,000, but I've talked to hundreds of people personally for a great deal of time. But there's been very few that got it right away and ran with it and wanted to read this. I always my benchmark is they actually read it and then want to know about this and this, and then they can't get enough. That's the way Terry and I were. We read to each other all year long when we got Yada Yah, and she printed it. And then there's the other people, and this is an experience that I've had recently, or within the last year or so. I get this thing where I know, as I sat there, and because I spent so much time and answered every question, I thought rather satisfactorily, and they seemed to say so of what they were asking after I laid out some things for them, gave them books, and that sort of things to read, and that if they wanted to. And the 2 questions that I've gotten over time has been, one, I think they knew that, or they were quite, how can I put this? They felt that I probably was right, and they didn't want to invest any time in it. But they wanted to know this, and I thought this very odd. A couple of times I've had people tell me that, they really were thrilled to know that there's 3 destinations for the soul.
Yeah.
Because that meant they weren't going to hell, or their father was not going to hell, or something of that nature. And the other, when I talk with somebody a lot about prophecy and why we know we're in the time of Jacob's troubles and so forth, and we can quibble over a year or two, but listen, this is the generation that saw Israel return. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you can't avoid. Damascus is crumbling, and on and on and on and on. And so you can watch the world fall apart. America is really being called out and coming home, or for our time, or whatever it was. I forget which book we're in. However, the other one they seem to respond to is, how long have I got?
Right.
Well, you either have a few years or you have eternity. It depends on what you respond to. I don't know. But let's just say that somewhere between half past Mike and half past CW, we're probably looking at 2033 or thereabouts. So we're in some serious decline here on the current 6,000 years of man controlling the earth. So what do y'all think? What's y'all's experience been? Anything similar to that?
I guess I'll go ahead and go. I was waiting on somebody.
Sure. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
I've had both ways. unfortunately, we had a couple of people that engaged the feast with us and then went back to Christmas or went back to church. And something I noticed in them, similar to what you said, they really latched on to these concepts of freedom and everything people say they love about God, but they really don't know how to function without a master. And a lot of times I noticed they would just kind of almost crumple, not really knowing what to do. And I actually had one fellow tell me that he was going to read it all and he'd know more than me pretty soon. He was that dedicated. And then when he realized it wasn't quite, an instant download and then you were over, it's an ongoing process, like I said, relationship that builds on itself, and it's a living thing that you're engaging. And he gave up, and he told me he was fine ceasing to exist. And, it's really sad when people choose that route, but they're allowed. And then, as you said, the other experience is people that are interested, but they don't have the stamina to. Yeah. You go ahead, Kurt.
What? No, I was just going to say, if you don't have free will, then they have to be able to choose and choose badly or choose well,
right?
Or make no choice and just linger. I mean,
right.
They've done no harm, and I know my father, who had quite an exceptional life as an athlete, as a businessman, as on and on and on, and world traveler, and he told me a few years before he died, he said, if there's nothing after, it doesn't bother me. I've had a terrific life. You know, so and I understand. I mean, I'm a little greedy for more.
Yeah, me too. My brother told me he was fine ceasing to exist, and I just looked at him like, how can you say that? How are you okay with this? But some people, they're tired, and they're tired of religious lies, and they're tired of not being able to tell the difference between religion's God and the God of the Torah, the real God. So,
yeah.
You know what they say,
Molly,
if you can't beat them, join them. I think religion works that way.
Yeah. Well, I've always wanted to know. I mean, even if I couldn't benefit from it, I still would want to know.
Right. Yeah, you want to have a choice.
I don't know. Maybe that's just. Yeah, I like to know stuff. So, okay, we're going to move now to an exciting part of this chapter, or this volume, chapter 4. And this is the story of Hezekiah. It's a very hard one to pronounce. Sometimes they put a yod in front of it, and sometimes they don't. And I can't.
What page are you on, Kurt?
We're, I don't have the page, but if you look for verse 30, 2 Chronicles 31, so it's probably around page 18 or further down. Forgive me, mine are not numbered. It may be further back than that, but just kind of thumb through.
Page 40.
And, I beg your
40?
pardon?
Thanks, Mike.
Page 40.
Page 40. All right. Thank you. See, Mike is the detail man. He'll correct everything.
Oh, and my success rate is the same as Yashia or Isaiah, 0.
Well, for a long time I thought nobody was listening at all. So I think I've been fortunate. Tara and I've been fortunate to have run across one at least, and maybe two. So but we have found a lot of people in this area that have listened to the shows and read the books, and it was quite amazing to hear their stories. In fact, that's what this show has become a little bit. We're doing a little bit of reading of the Torah and talking, but it's nice. I know they felt if when they would come over and we'd all talk would be the same as a lot of the audience, I think, that meets on Friday, gets an opportunity to hear what y'all's experience is, because all of us can't be close to people that, other than the occasional Pesach or the Moed Mikra holiday festival feast that we do. It's nice to hear how everybody else is walking the path and the things that we encounter. So I hopefully as well.
I got to tell y'all, I managed a lot of the social media sites, for
Yes.
like Shamar Torah and yada yada sites on like Facebook and other places. And I have some friends on Steven Cerna on YouTube. He does a lot of networking for the show and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people that you guys have not met that you're impacting that, you know, we may see, or other people may see here and there. Some people just never come out and really speak. A guy named Clayton recently, I had never heard of him, but he's been around for a while on Facebook, and it's really nice to see somebody. He's married, and he and his wife are covenant, and there's people out there that Mike and you may think you have a zero account, but I doubt that.
Yeah,
it's helping somebody.
Well,
somewhere.
it's a narrow path, and it's nice to know that there are other people walking the path. And I'm sorry, it's so few, but the people who choose are exceptional people. They truly are. They want to know. They want to know Yahweh. They're exceptional people. Like having y'all here is always is exciting for me. To listen to y'all's story. So, but let's talk about Hezekiah, because this is good stuff, I think. So Yachiz.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll tell you after I read it. I'll tell you. Yeah. Well, I got 3 different pronunciations from 3 different things, and
right?
Probably none of them are right, because half of them are pointed and whatever. So there are no points in these words. You know, Moshe didn't believe in points. He drew little characters. But now I'll tell you what I discovered about his name from the ancient pictographs, if you like. So he sent out written letters. This is really cool. He sent out written letters to all of Israel and Yehuda. And this is the king, and also a written letter to Ephraim and Manasseh. Of course, that's the 2 main families and the 10 tribes of the north, to come to the house and home of Yahweh in Jerusalem, to attend to and to act upon, to celebrate and engage in the Passover approach to Yahweh, the God of the individuals who engage and endure with the Almighty Yisrael. It is obvious that he got it. Now, when he got it, he'll go on. You'll find out in here. He'll go on, and we're not exactly sure. It wasn't like a sudden event that they were all surrounded, and they were in a terrible situation with the Assyrians surrounding them. But let's continue. Let me continue on just a little bit, and then we'll talk about this deal. Indeed, if you return to Yahweh, this is the greatest news of all. He said, if you return, this is his letter, if you return to Yahweh, your children and your relatives will find compassion, mercy, and favor. That is in contrast to Paul, obviously. In the face of the captors, you will return and be restored to this land. And that is because Yahweh, your God, is merciful and prone to favoritism and forgiveness. He will not turn away and remove his presence from you if you return to him. Those words mean nothing if he didn't provide, if he didn't live up to it, if they didn't live up to the promise. But interesting about the Hezekiah story, which a lot of people may not know, that they were facing utter destruction, total utter destruction. And it was nobody would help them. The Egyptians, they tried to pay them off. They tried to get the Egyptians to come up and help them. The Babylonians were going to help, but they got wiped out by the same army. The Syrian had 185,000. They were surrounding them. And they turned to Yahweh and celebrated Passover. And we're going to talk about that in a minute, too. I'll read the other part. And Yahweh recognized that they had come home to him, and he wiped out the Assyrian army verbatim. Now, when the Assyrian king and his little bodyguards and whatever he had left of his army went back to Assyria, he actually wrote it all down on what they call a stele, on a stone, and it's available. It's around, and he repeats the same story that's in this section about what they did. They wiped out his army. Now, why is that important? Well, it mimics what he did for the Israelites in Mitzrayim, and it also foretells what he would do for the people who are coming home from the United States. Now, most of the European, probably the Yehudim from Europe have mostly already returned, or a lot of them certainly have. But the American ones, the 6 million that are here, have not, because it's very comfortable here, and I think they've grown up to believe that they'll be safe here. They haven't had to endure Germany 1936 to 1939, but it's coming. And that's what this show is really more about. As much as I'd like to see all the friends and all that we've had over the years and some really nice people, they're not interested in this. He wants, but above all things, any of us can join, but above all things, this is a message, our mission that y'all participate in so beautifully and so helpfully with Craig, is to bring the children back to y'all. So this is a letter just like that letter that the king wrote. Come home, turn to Yahweh, celebrate the Moed Mikros, accept the terms and conditions of the mitzvah, and be loved by Yahweh and be protected by Yahweh. Any comments? Don't let me talk too much because I'll just keep on talking.
Hey, Kurt.
You're doing great.
Sir.
I need to fact check you.
Oh no! Okay, be kind. Be kind. Remember, I'm the substitute teacher. I'm not the teacher here.
Okay, they did find Sennacherib's annals. Okay, there's 3 stills. It's like a kind of like a cylinder. It's more of a hexagonal cylinder. So
yes,
it doesn't actually
I've seen a
say
picture.
that. Yeah, it doesn't actually say that the army was wiped out because he wouldn't admit that. But he does say, as for Hezekiah, I shut him up like a caged bird in his royal city of Jerusalem. But he doesn't. But he never says
he was still there. He wiped out
never
everybody,
said,
but he was still there. Yeah, he has to say
he was
things.
still there. So what the scholars don't. So it doesn't actually say that his army was wiped out in the still.
Yeah.
So the scholars will tell you that, he had Jerusalem surrounded and he had all his war machines and all his soldiers, and then the Babylonians started to revolt, so he had to retreat and go take care of that problem. But what I think happened was his army was wiped out, and he went back to Nineveh with his tail between his legs. Yeah, and when the Babylonians found out that his army got wiped out, then it's like, okay, it's time to revolt because he just lost 185,000 soldiers. So now's the time to revolt. So that's what I think. But that's not what the scholars tell you.
Yeah, I know, but Hezekiah was there, and we have a long history afterwards, and most of them won't. But the same thing happened in Egypt when that army was wiped out, according to the historical records of the Amalekites. They said they saw it, and Yahweh talks about in the Torah. It talks about the Amalekites who came out of Egypt started calling out the names to the Israelites who were slaves, and calling them by name and saying, come back to Egypt. We're in charge now. You're our property. The record left behind is mostly identical to the 10 plagues. There's a couple of things that the Egyptians did not write down. One of the priests that I did a little show on, poorly, but I did a little show on it. And from Velikovsky's book on Ages and Chaos. But the research there is the same. The Amalekites saw that the army was gone, and then they felt very brave. And the Amalekite reign in Egypt was about 450 years. That army was wiped out, obviously, by the set-apart spirit, the Ruach Kodesh, who blew them away, and they crossed the waters. And Moshe went on. And then, unfortunately, when they did not go back into the land of Yisrael, they had to suffer another 40 years to learn the lesson. And I've often thought, and I have nothing to prove other than just to say it makes sense to me. One of the things about that in studying the Amalekites, which are the who ruled everything from Syria all the way down to Egypt, except for Israel, they they gave them a 40-year start for the Amalekites to go from Egypt up there and take over that land. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had it. If they'd gone in the first time, there'd been no Amalekite fighting. And the Amalekites they're not wiped out until Dode finishes them off.
Yep.
What a tragedy! What a tragedy! So, but the history, the point being the more important point was that yes, the steel probably doesn't say as much as we wish it would, but he was there. That's recorded. They were suffered. The Amalekites were is irrefutable. They took over. They were there for several hundred years until the Egyptians never ruled again until after David, and well, actually, really during the time of they got strong during the day of Solomon, when the Queen Pharaoh, Heptipsup, which I can hardly pronounce, but she came up and she was known as the Queen of Sheba, and because she came through the land of Sheba, she took her barges right up and came through the same place that the Moshe had crossed over, and anyhow. But it's interesting. No, you're not going to get a real good report. But there's more than enough evidence that you can trust that these things happen as the way Yahweh did, and the more and so much stuff that y'all are popping up on what the archaeologists are proving that they were there, they were this, and then this is that. Is you can trust Yahweh. I guess is the real answer to the whole thing. Is he gives you more than enough reasons to do, and if you trust him, you'll find out he's good to his word. Now.
Yep.
So, hey, I got another little trivia thing. They did find Hezekiah's tunnel like a long time ago, like in the 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Which is talked about in 2 Chronicles 32:4.
Is that all where all the little statues were? All the pagan statues were thrown?
No, that was within the last year or two. They found the Hezekiah's storeroom with all the idols.
I got you.
And storeroom.
Yes.
No, this is the tunnel that brought the water from the Gihon Spring to the Siloam Pool.
Right.
Okay.
Because in 2 Chronicles 32:4, so there was gathered much people together who stopped all the fountains and the brook that ran through the midst of the land, saying, "Why should the king of Assyria come and find much water?" So they built this tunnel to divert the water to inside the city walls. So they would have water, but the Assyrians wouldn't have, as much access to water.
Mm-hmm.
Right, during the siege.
Yeah.
Right before the siege. Because,
they say
the
you can
Assyrians
walk
were
through
coming
it
from
now,
the north.
but it's partly underwater. Sorry.
But that was, Jerusalem wasn't the greatest big city in the era that some of these guys conquered. They were pretty good at conquering places. They really wiped out northern Israel.
Yeah.
So it's not that wasn't the most formidable foe that they did, and they didn't have an army worth a darn. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been turning to Egypt or anybody that would help them. So I get it that you can make them suffer, but the siege, if they sieged and it was not for Yahweh, they'd win. Yahweh just won't protect you. If you don't want anything to do with Yahweh, he ain't gonna protect you. I don't care who you are.
Right.
So it's just so it's Anyway, here is so what are you going to do? Why not? I wrote in my little notes. Why not listen to a foreigner? Seeing as how these Loi that we just talked about earlier where we started, they were supposed to be in charge of the Ten of the Witness. They were supposed to conduct the Moed Mikros. They were supposed to teach you about the Torah. The Torah is a teaching instrument. It comes, the verbal root to the noun Torah is Yara. Yara means to teach. Everything in it, I always look at it as a teaching instrument. The Loi were the teachers. I'm not oversimplifying. Yes, they're unionists and so forth, but they're also the teachers. They instruct. Torah means, I always try to remember Torah is good. Instruction, teaching, guidance, and direction. That's what they do. And they're not there to do it. They abandoned their cause. They abandoned Yahweh. And that's what has led us up to this point. So, barring them not being there to teach us about the Torah, we have a different scenario temporarily. Therefore, regarding someone else, an observant and discerning foreigner from a different ethnicity and geographic location, who will come to understand, that's Nakari, who to show the way to the benefits of the relationship is not of your people, this Israel. He will come from a different country in a different time, for the express purpose of being a reliable witness, providing truthful answers regarding your surprisingly important name, Yahweh's name, the influence of your hand, the Yod, the Yod, along with the powerful and passionate ruler who is prepared to lead, which of course he's referring to Dod, and the protective and productive ram who shepherds the flock, whom you have reached out and who will reach out and will extend. When he arrives on the scene and chooses to pursue this is our mission, in my opinion. I don't think it's opinion. I think it's pretty factual. Then he will help interested parties reconcile their relationship by providing those who exercise good judgment with the information and justifications needed to make a correct and reasoned decision regarding the familiar relationship. When you hear this out of the heavens, coming from the atmosphere, out of the air, like we're talking right now, within the location where you live, then engage and act accordingly, doing everything which to show the way the observant foreigner from the different ethnicity and geographic location who understands has invited you to read, for the express purpose of being a witness who provides answers such that every person on the earth will have a genuine and ongoing opportunity to become familiar. Every person on the earth will have a genuine and ongoing opportunity to become familiar with, to know, to acknowledge, to accept, and understand your name, coming to respect and revere you, Yahweh, simultaneously along with your people, Israel, and also that you may know that truthfully your family and his house, which to reveal the correct path to give life meaning that I have built for the family, was as designated and called, who are designated and called by your name. Once again, it reiterates what we said before, but it's also exactly what Hezekiah did. He wrote this letter to all of these people and said to them, come home, come home, come home. I, out of fun, because that's something I can actually do a little bit, I took Hezekiah's name. If you know the story, he was, it means, the normal meaning in Hezekiah would be to be firm, strong, to grasp, courage to repair. It comes from the word chazak, which is a verb, to grow from, and it's a process, acting with power. And the second part of his name is Yah. What a great name! To grow from yes. and be with Yah. So he's associated with Yah. So I looked up the three letters of the first verb, and of course you have a chet, and you have a zain, and a quaf, which is a fence that's protected. The plow is carves a path to a point on the horizon, like you have the quaf, which is the line of the sun going down where the light gathers on the horizon, or raises up, if you prefer. Either way. So that is the three letters. The chet, of course, is also the number 8, and the plow, the zain, is a 7. So, and the quaf is 100. Then the rest of his name comes from a yod and a hay, or the basic name, and the word that is attached and makes up his name is a yod with 2 hands and a hay with 1 pair of hands looking up, and that's that could represent, in my opinion, the terms and conditions of the covenant. So, everything about his name is good. He was well chosen. He's a special character. We learn a lot from him by just studying what he had to say, and you just can't go wrong in his stuff. You can pick out just about any spot you want, and it's pretty thrilling. So now, because I'm poor at leading this kind of discussion, we still have a few minutes, and we're going to go to 6 o'clock. And this is, I think, is really sweet. This is about, once again, carrying on, continuing on about, let me tell you what it is so you can look it up if you like. This is 2 Chronicles 30:26. And Yahweh says, and there was a great joy in Jerusalem. Indeed, by comparison from the time of Solomon, he's talking about what was going on in Hezekiah's day. What they have just done is they celebrated Pesach Matzah week for a week, and then they left it so much they did it again. And Yahweh cites that, and he says, and there was a great joy, excuse my dog, there was a great joy in Jerusalem, Jerusalem. Indeed, by comparison from the time of Solomon, Shalomah, the son of David, Dod, Melech, Israel's king of Israel, there had been nothing like this in Jerusalem concerning those days. Therefore, regarding someone else, well, let me stop right there. He has pointed out that them coming back is the greatest event so far in the Torah. Happy event.
Indeed.
I just think that, wow, that is so cool. Anyway,
it is.
Now y'all can help me out now here because I called you so I wouldn't sit here and twiddle my thumbs at the tail end. I was telling Dee when I was doing some of those shows, and every now and then he would take off and say, "Go do a show tomorrow," and I'm going, "Huh?" What shadow you miss? Yeah, he's sweet. He's a fine fellow. I don't know how y'all work with him, but he's tough on me sometimes. No, I'm kidding. He does just expect you to chop him, go do that. And I said, "Oh, okay." We talked today about this, so.
Yes.
I would have all this material and I couldn't get through it, and then I have all this material and I'd be through. So let me share. So I saved something for the end here, as we have about another 12 minutes, and I'll tell you what I do with the pictographs, and then I want to point out something that I've been studying a little bit lately. When I translate, not only translate, the main reason I started to translate was just because Terry had asked me. She said, look, she had gone from Catholicism to Protestantism, and we had gone to a preacher who was a PhD in Stanford University and all that kind of stuff, and he was a Bible collection, unbelievable stuff we had, and things that are just, we had Torahs from the 14th century and stuff there in the collection. It was amazing, and he taught mostly when I became involved with him, it was mostly talking about Genesis and the Torah and the feast and all that. That's why we knew him. We didn't pray. We didn't go in the closet and pray, all that kind of stuff. And the long lectures, and I thought maybe that was the place. And I was, but I learned a lot there, so I knew what the questions would be. And when I finally ran across when Terry said, because she was listening to the same show that Jackie was, and she said, "You're wrong." I was thinking to myself, I hope not. But she said, "No, read this." And that's what led us into that, and it's been wonderful since, because I knew enough to know this guy's right. If 40-50% of this is, I already know it's right, the other half is right, then I got to change what I'm doing. This ain't right. But then she asked me as we got further and further along with it, as I'm sure y'all have experienced, well, dadgummit, prove it. Right. And the one thing about Craig that's so different than the others, he's not pretentious. He knows that he's still finding things and discovering things. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to rewrite all this stuff. But some of the things we discovered about Dode and Yosha and all has caused these giant rewrites to get it right. Because he's not going to put out a product and leaving anything any stone unturned. So
right.
as we read that, as she said to me, okay, we'll prove it. The only way you can do that, and I am not a linguist. I passed German class, and that's about it. And as quick as I could get out of a language class, I got out and I didn't speak it again. And Spanish was not good. So I'm not good at this, and I've really fought over it. But the difference in this is I'm not learning this to speak it. I'm not going to go down so I can buy a loaf of bread in Tel Aviv. I am reading this because I really want to examine those words and know that that's exactly what they mean beyond a shadow of a doubt, or as much as I can.
Right.
So I followed the same sequence that most of y'all have done, and certainly the ones that he tells us to do. He told us how to do it. He said, this is what I use, and I've been very fortunate to be able to sit at his desk and watch him do it, and also see what he's using. And I can't afford all the equipment that he has, but a lot of this stuff is online. I need a good interlinear area so I can see what the words are. I have a Dead Sea Scroll Bible so I can see what's actually in the Dead Sea Scrolls. I have quite a few hardcover things for the things that I don't have online, and I put quite a big spread out when I'm doing it and I look at everything. But I was in love with I have found. Let me back up just a minute. I have forced myself to learn grammar. I have a cheat sheet right here that I can look up because cohortive and adjusive are confusing if you don't look at them every day. And I don't have the time to do what he's doing, and I'm not a writer anyway. But I'm not trying to write. I'm just trying to look up every word and prove that that's what it says. Oh, my. And sometimes I find some things that are really, some crumbs. I say, oh, by the way, Craig, look at this. And sometimes they're valuable, and sometimes, he'll but he's always appreciative. And what I've also learned is that, we know that there are verbal roots of the noun, like Yahweh is to Towrah. That explains it. We know that the first use, you need to have some kind of system, some kind of lexicon or some kind of program that you can look up what is the first time it's used, because when Yah uses a word the first time is quite significant. It's probably the most important meaning when he introduces the word like that, so that helps you. And then what a lot of people don't know, and this is from Jensenius's grammar book and a few others, there's a lot of two-letter roots. There's three-letter roots and four-letter words, but most of them are two-letter words, and there's only about 8,000 real words that haven't, other than the things they've been adding in the 20th century to Hebrew. But these two-letter roots pretty well tell you right away what the main understanding of that is. For instance, on Hezekiah, it's just the two. The root is a chet and a zain, and it's vision, light, to perceive beyond the normal experience, which he did. He said he thought, okay, get the Torah out, and then from that point on, they were going in the right direction. So that's what the root to Hezekiah's name was. But here's something that I ran across the last few months, and I've been kind of kicking it around, and y'all will see what you think. I'm not married to any of this kind of stuff, but it's fun. I'm fascinated with the pictographs, and I'm being an artist is probably why. But this Hebrew is different. I mean, there's a lot of reasons I could go on about Hebrew and how it is such a magnificent language based beyond just the normal languages we're familiar with, the English, the Greek, the Romance, Spanish, Portuguese, et cetera. However, the thing that I found really fascinating lately was that think this, and it resonated with me because when I was studying cartooning, I had a buddy who wanted me to do X-Men comic books as for his friend was a rather famous X-Men comic book, and he was looking for an ink artist and somebody could draw. He didn't draw very well, but he wrote well, and he wanted me to draw his figures for it. And I probably would have done it except he didn't pay anything. I couldn't afford to work for what they do. And he got lots, but he wasn't going to pay me anything. So I said, I'll have to pass on this wonderful opportunity. I don't need the fame and fortune. I need the mortgage payment. So that we didn't go anywhere there. But I studied, and I was interested, and I started studying the history of pictographs. There weren't any Hebrews in the book, but there was a lot of early symbols and so forth. So I was studying that. So, and here's what I concluded with this: pictographs are symbols of a concept first. You understand that when you see that hand, and let's think for a minute about Yahweh's name. We'll finish off with Yahweh's name. You've got a hand hanging down from above, reaching out with an open palm. That's not to slap you. That is to grasp you. Is to lift you up like you would a child. That's a very easy symbol to understand. You have a person standing up, not bowing down, not bent over, with their hands up in the air, looking up towards Yahweh. You have a wah, which is drawn as a tent peg, but it is really like the letter Y, where you have this little person holding their hands up between Mama and Papa. The first one, the way the letters are positioned, that becomes a male hey. The hey at the end, which is the same symbol, is positioned at the end of a word like Towrah, like Yahweh, becomes a feminine word. That's the female hanging up. So you have a family of male, female, and a child in between, because the Wah means to increase. That's the increase of the family. You can read all that as a concept and never make a sound. You can read the Torah and never make a sound.
Right.
We in English are asked to, we go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and we make sounds, and then we take those sounds to articulate a concept.
Right.
You can read the entire Torah in pictographs and never make a sound. Now, what's significant about that? Nothing more than it's a form of communication that you can't screw up. Now, think about this. If I can change the symbols, I can change the concepts. Ain't that convenient if you want to twist God's word?
Right, which is really what they did.
Couldn't keep these. They can't keep these symbols, because when they say something, you could look up and say, "Wait a minute,
that's not what it means."
1/4 of Yahweh's name. He's obviously not an egotist.
Right.
He's reaching down to help them up, and they're reaching up to him to be lifted up, and they're all walking. They ain't bowing, and the increase of the family, and 3/4 of the word is about us, not about him. What can you draw from that? Well, a lot. So to me, that's pretty unique. Mm-hmm. This is a fabulous language just to play with, just to look at, to see what you can discern from all of that, or am I just really funny? Peculiar.
No, it's interesting because Yahweh told Yashaya to write in the letters of man, the little paleo guys. So there's obviously a lot to this form of language, and of course the Babylon rewrite, I would say, of the Aleph-Bet hides a lot of the meaning. You can't really look at them and recognize the concepts without going back to the original paleo.
Yeah, and they changed it. Now there's one reason that I try to give them a break in Babylon, because they're slaves. They're no longer writing on paper,
right?
Papyrus or anything. So they've got to work on clay tablets, and it's very hard to make curves on a clay tablet. I don't know if you've tried to write in clay, but you can make a sharp-edged, just out of practicality, you can take a little knife or a little wooden stick that has a sharp edge on it, and you can make sharp edges, and kind of hard-edged triangles and rectangles and stuff, out of letters. But the point is, you never should have done it to begin with. Of course, if they never did to begin with, and they'd done what the Loi was just asked to do, and why he set them apart, Kodesh, why he set them apart for his own purposes, then they never would have been in Babylon anyway. So it's really, this is frustrating. You want to say, what were you thinking? What was I thinking? Why did I sit down and listen to all that crap? Excuse my language.
Well,
hey, Kurt,
at least you were
for
thinking.
Yes, sir?
I got a pictograph for you.
Yeah.
So Mount Sinai, right? Moshe gets the Torah from Yahweh and the 2 stone tablets. So Sinai is spelled with a Samek. It's Samek Yod Nun Yod. So, okay, this is what I get out of it. You can examine it later. So Sinai is a sign. It's a sign with Yahweh's hand reaching down to his children, probably giving the sign to his children, with the Yod at the end meaning my. Maybe it means my sign that I am giving to my children.
It sounds really good to me.
That is cool.
You know, the letters are just like the words. They have multiple meanings, and it's all in the context of what it is on how you would write it, and it really makes sense. And you know, sometimes they're negative. Some word can be negative or positive based on the context, because you can have good words and teeth, shemek. You could have or shin. You can have good words and you can have bad words. It depends on how they're located and what the context is of the words that are around them. So, and the only reason I do it, number one, is fun, and is to glean little things that to prove once again from every angle you look at this thing called Torah, and the letters and the words and the grammar and the stuff that set context and the verbal roots and the 2-letter roots, and all of a sudden you will come. Most often, the few times that I've said, "Where did you get that from, Craig?" You know what? Where he got it from is I didn't have enough lexicons. You know what's the thing in the Old Testament?
Theological word book.
Theological word book of the Old Testament. He that's a better resource than the ones I had. I mean, I have Jensenius, which is great, but it doesn't always. And once it was only about 3 times when I called him up. I said, "Where are you getting that?" And he said, "Well, here." Oh, okay. Well, that's a little more research that I didn't have. I couldn't call Mike because I didn't have his number. You know, if I had called Mike, I would be all right. Or Molly. Molly said, "Let me draw it for you," and I'll send it back in. You know what we call Molly?
She's fast too.
You know what we call Molly? She has a nickname. She probably doesn't know it, but we call her Molly DeMille, the great director. I mean, I draw these little single cell paintings. I do these little single cell paintings, and I can really paint a little fingernail, a little toenail on a dog, and you can say, "Wow, that's really cool." But Molly can make it come alive and walk across the room and make noise, and I'm amazed.
That's too much credit.
She's got a knack for it.
No, it's not. I don't care. I can't do squat. You cannot. I barely have learned how to email in the last 2 years because of Terry's situation. So I've had to talk to this thing, and in fact,
you've come a long way.
The fact that I'm talking on a cell phone, it just blows me away. Because I was so happy with a fax machine. I truly was. I'd write it down. You know how I used to write my orders? I'd write them out. I'd print them out. Well, let me just say, I would print them out to my vendors for my art to buy paintings and easels and stuff, and paint and easels and things and canvases. And I write out when I needed a part, I would draw it, and then on my little fax machine, send it over and say, "I want that part. I don't know what it is. I can't find the number. It looks like that. Can you do it?" And I always got the right part. And then they gave me email.
I used to think it was funny that you would print it all out.
Well, that was good. I used to write it all out, and Terry was kind enough. She used to scan it, and then she would send it in to him. So, and sometimes they used them. Y'all, I know it's 6 o'clock. We filled in I as best we could. I think it was enjoyable and enlightening for me to be with y'all. I appreciate what y'all do. I know the rest of everybody does. I thought it's nice that they can have a face to a name and get to know y'all a little bit. And I've enjoyed it immensely. And thank you so much for helping me out, because this is
thanks for having
too
me.
much responsibility for me. Well, you're welcome.
It was fun.
And Molly, thank you. It wasn't so bad, was it, Molly? I was nicer to you this time, huh?
This time.
Okay, every 3 years, you know.
Yes, yeah.
And Mike, thank you for being here. That's been it was wonderful. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Sure.
Okay,
Shabbat
buddy.
shalom.
That was a great time.
Now,
Shabbat shalom,
now
guys.
let me ask one question before we go away. Let me ask one question today. If we hang up, are we good? Do we have to do anything, or do you have to do anything?
Nope.
We just hang up?
Nope, once I hang up, it's over.
Okay. Okay. To those that are listening, thank you, and Shabbat Shalom, and thank you for putting up with us. We enjoyed it immensely. Good night, y'all.
Yep.
Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Bye-bye.
Night.